Hi everyone, this is Albert with the AUDL, and today I'm going to be walking through a sample speech and breaking it down to see what was successful about it and maybe what you can improve yourself through this example speech. So there's several things to look for if this presentation is going to cooperate. So there's several things that I want you guys to look for during the speech. Is that the first thing I want you to look at is the structure of the speech. Does it have a good introduction? Does it have a body with good topic sentence, evidence, and conclusion sentences? How is evidence incorporated? And what does the conclusion look like? When it comes to content, are there facts to back every single claim? Do I incorporate the evidence well? Watch for the word economy and watch for how that balances against rhetoric. And last, look at the delivery. Specifically, look at the pacing and pronunciation of the words, the emphasis of words, and as well as the timing. Okay, so I'm going to start a sample speech now, and this is going to be on the topic, should we mandate vaccines? So this is the last topic for the speech bowl. While vaccines are crucial for public health, specifics matter. In the case of mandatory vaccinations, forcing the issue will only make matters worse. Thus, the states should not mandate vaccines and should instead pursue more effective avenues to increase vaccine coverage. My first argument is that mandated vaccines may cause backlash. For example, history has proven that mandates have had backlash when ill-timed or ill-presented. Holzman and Wiederman from the National Center for Biotechnology Information in 2019 document that mandatory vaccination may lead to opposing attitudes and even less vaccine uptake, particularly in those with existing crucial attitudes towards vaccines. In specific, they point to Italy, where 4 mandatory vaccines were in place before 2017. The coverage for vaccination against measles, mumps, and rubella dropped countrywide from 90 to 87% between 2000 and 2016. Similarly, the AMA Journal of Ethics documents that mandatory Ebola vaccination in the Democratic Republic of Congo incited attacks against the WHO vaccination centers, worsening the outbreak. While the hope that vaccine mandates would increase coverage and improve public health, the mandate in the status quo would instead be counterproductive. My second argument is that the government should not have medical authority over minority populations. According to Blow in the New York Times 2020, the unfortunate American fact is that Black people in this country have been well trained over centuries to distrust both the government and the medical establishment on the issue of healthcare. From Tuskegee to forced sterilization, history proves that giving the state medical power is profoundly dangerous for people of color. More suitable alternatives to increase vaccination coverage include 1, federal stipends and state incentive programs, 2, vaccine education programs, and 3, launching comprehensive marketing plans of vaccination by the federal government. These programs are necessary, as Holzman and Wiederman recommend, to improve trust, rectify perceived risks, and improve access and affordability of the vaccine. In conclusion, rather than benefiting public health, vaccine mandates will increase social division and backlash. Instead, we should pursue more suitable alternatives which remedy for the lack of trust, correct for misconceptions, and improve the access and affordability of the vaccine. So that was the speech. And I identified several areas of improvement for myself. One is the script. The fact that I'm trying to write an example speech means that this was completely scripted. I would actually recommend that you don't write out the entire script. I would recommend having main sentences and then bullet points, which include your evidence and what you're incorporating from the evidence specifically, like a quotation. I just wrote it all out so I could make sure that it was just like smooth, which it was kind of. Something that I could have improved this speech to would probably be the stutters at the beginning, but that's kind of natural with a lot of speeches. All you have to do is keep on practicing, and especially since it's an online submission, you can take this shot multiple times until you get into a good flow of it. The second area of improvement I thought that I could have is the use of evidence. I usually use a lot more evidence than what I use in this speech. But for the sake of time, since it was 2 to 3 minutes long, as well as like other constrictions, really just time, uh, there was just a severe limit on how much evidence I could incorporate. And the third is really not an issue, but it's like really something that you have to evaluate when you just give any sort of speech, is that your word, like focusing on word economy versus like getting rhetoric in. And I think it's good to, especially in a 2 to 3 minute speech that's really informative, to focus on word economy. But at the same time, having a bit of rhetoric in there and having a bit of personality really will be helpful for you. Okay, so breaking down the speech, the structure of the speech again is the introduction, the body, which is going to be on the next slide, in the conclusion. So when it comes to the introduction, there's three parts: the hook, a transition between the hook and the thesis, and the thesis. On the rubric, actually, we are looking for a stated thesis. You can identify the thesis here. It says, thus, the state should not mandate vaccines. That's the thesis statement. And it says there's another, and we should pursue an alternative. And that's why you just have to state the thesis really, really clearly. The hook here is really, really short. It's just a simple sentence. It just says that vaccines are good, but we have to look at how we deliver them. So the specifics of how they're delivered matters. And the transition is there to bridge the gap between this hook and this thesis. So it's pretty simple. Introduction writing, I would recommend it to either write it at the end, or if you have like a really great like sentence come into your head, I would just write it on the spot. But you kind of get a feel of the gist of like what you're saying, and then like have a good introduction that tries to capture people's attention. Some things to avoid would be a bunch of like stock quotes, which are like they're overused. Try to avoid cliches as well. And if you have to ask yourself the question, is this cliche? It probably is. So avoid doing that. Um, that's about it for the introduction. It can be fairly short, as you've seen. For the conclusion, it's really, for me, it was just a summary sentence and then a future direction sentence. So this first sentence here in conclusion, vaccine mandates will increase social division and backlash, is really just the summary of the entire speech. So it's like, if you weren't paying attention to anything at all, just get this one sentence. And then the future directions is what I think that we should do instead and what we should do in moving forward with the speech. Onto the content. So we're not really going to focus on all these pictures, but this is just the whole speech if you want to refer to it in the future. But when it comes to content, there's several things to look for. First is structure, second, evidence incorporation, and third, you get bonus points for personality. And this comes to really injecting personality is like, it can be either in like writing style itself, or you can even have like a professional type narrative where you talk about something that's personal to yourself, which I don't know if I would recommend. I would stick to just like having a good writing style and maybe having a good voice inside of your essay. Um, when it comes to the actual structure, so first is the topic sentence. And so you see that it says, my first argument is mandated vaccines may cause backlash. And that's the first topic sentence. This is also crucial that I have the words my first argument, because that's a road marker. It marks where I am in the speech and helps give an idea for people listening of like what the structure of the speech physically looks like. You'll see that the other argument, my second argument, also begins with that. And more suitable alternatives, which is the third body, it also is a type of transition or a topic sentence. Then you get into the actual content of the speech, and this is going to follow the claim, evidence, reasoning format. So whenever I have a claim, such as these backlashes, when they're ill-timed, they could be bad, I always have evidence. So this one is from the National Center for Biotechnology Information. And this is where I talk about evidence incorporation. It's really crucial in these speeches that you have a good ethos where you have where you have good sources, and you want, whenever you use those sources, you want to have them inside of your speech so it increases the reputability. And so here I say the whole thing, the author, which is the NCBI in 2019. Notice that I didn't say the NCBI in my speech because most people aren't going to know what the NCBI is. So I actually said the full words. So usually you would want to include like the journal title or the author title, as well as their profession, like if they're a reporter or a professor, as well as the year. And that's how you incorporate evidence. And the last part of content is going to be the conclusion or transition. So, this conclusion for the first one is while the hope that vaccine mandates would increase coverage, the mandate in the status quo would instead be counterproductive. And that summates the entire argument, and it sets us up for the next one, which is my second argument. The last part about giving speeches is going to be delivery. And the basics of it are really pronunciation and flow. My pronunciation at the beginning was kind of shoddy. I would recommend rehearsing your words beforehand. And the flow is just making it through it sentence by sentence that is like it has a certain flow and a rhythm to it. So like it doesn't seem choppy. Most of you are pretty good at this. When it comes to the advanced toolkit, you should watch for pacing, emphasis, and tone. So pacing is like inside of the sentence, you have certain words that you want to spend more time on in comparison to other words. So such as when I'm reading this sentence, when I'm reading the source, I tend to not spend so much time reading the National Center for Biotechnology Information because it matters that it's there. And it's not important information. It just adds to the ethos. Emphasis, like pacing, you want to emphasize certain words, and this can be either by using pacing or tone. So you're gonna either want to slow down for certain words, or you're gonna want to like change your tone. So you can go higher in your voice, or you can go lower in your voice. But either way, they both add emphasis. And so if I read this first sentence in this first body, my first argument is mandated vaccines may cause backlash. So I'm trying to emphasize backlash, and I'm also trying to emphasize my roadmap sign. So my first argument. So I'm spending more time here, and I'm trying to emphasize them in terms of volume as well. So those are things to watch for in terms of delivery. Um, I think that's about it.